Rising an incredible 29,000 feet above sea level, Mount Everest reigns as the tallest peak on Earth, towering over the Mahalangur Himal subrange of the Himalayas. Straddling the border between Tibet and Nepal, this legendary mountain is more than just a climber's dream. It's a place shrouded in mystery. Over the years, Everest has been the setting for baffling, unexplained events that continue to puzzle experts and adventurers alike. Today, we're diving into 17 of the most mind-boggling mysteries ever recorded on Mount Everest, stories so astonishing, they'll leave you speechless. The mystery of Mallory and Irvine. Most people believe Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first to reach the summit of Mount Everest in 1953. But what if they weren't? What if two British climbers, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine, had already conquered the peak nearly 3 decades earlier, in 1924? The last known sighting of Mallory and Irvine was through a telescope, where they appeared as tiny black specks, just 100 feet from the summit. But they never returned. Did they make it to the top before vanishing into history? No one knows for sure. Mallory was no stranger to Everest. He had been part of expeditions in 1921 and 1922, mapping the mountain's treacherous terrain. He was the first European to lay eyes on its western slopes and quickly realized that oxygen tanks were crucial for survival at such extreme altitudes. He chose Irvine as his climbing partner because of his expertise with the oxygen equipment, an innovation that could make or break their ascent. On that fateful day, the two climbers set out with 5 porters and a guide. As a snowstorm loomed, the guide called for them to turn back. But they pressed on and were never seen again. The following day, their camp was eerily abandoned, 2 sleeping bags arranged in a T-shape, but no sign of the men. Then, in 1999, Mallory's body was discovered, frozen in time. But instead of solving the mystery, it only deepened it. The camera they carried, potentially containing photographic proof of their success, was missing. Yet one clue stood out. Mallory had promised his wife, Ruth, that he would leave her photo at the summit. He had kept it safely in his inner pocket, but when his body was found, the photo was gone. Could this mean that Mallory and Irvine were the true pioneers of Everest's peak, decades before history gave the credit to Hillary and Norgay? The mystery remains, buried somewhere in the snow and silence of the world's highest mountain. The haunting sounds of Everest. Mount Everest is a place of triumph and tragedy, but among its many mysteries, one of the most unsettling is the eerie sounds that echo through the night. When darkness falls over the mountain, the silence is shattered by loud, chilling noises that ripple through the valleys, an otherworldly roar that makes it seem as if Everest itself is alive and angry. Veteran climber Dave Hahn, who has reached the summit an astonishing 15 times, was among the first to report this terrifying phenomenon. He described hearing a deafening crash, like something massive was breaking apart and tumbling down the slopes. It was so relentless and overwhelming that it kept him from sleeping. Was it an avalanche? A supernatural force? Or something even more sinister? Scientists have since uncovered the truth. The terrifying sounds are caused by Everest's rapidly shifting glaciers. As temperatures plunge after sunset, the ice contracts and cracks, sending huge chunks tumbling from great heights. The resulting thunderous noise can be heard for miles, a haunting reminder of the mountain's raw, untamed power. But there's something even more disturbing. Experts warn that these sounds are becoming more frequent. They believe this is a direct consequence of climate change, as rising global temperatures accelerate glacial melting. Everest isn't just making noise, it's crying out, warning us of the changes happening in the world. The sound of ice breaking is terrifying. But what it signifies for the future might be even scarier. The zone of no return. One of the most terrifying and unforgiving places on Earth lies high above Mount Everest, the zone of no return. This deadly region, sitting at an altitude of 8,000 meters, 26,247 feet, is where the air becomes so thin that sustaining life becomes nearly impossible. Even with supplemental oxygen, climbers struggle with every breath as their bodies slowly succumb to the extreme conditions. Most fatalities on Everest occur here, where exhaustion, disorientation, and brutal weather turn each step into a fight for survival. The relentless cold and unpredictable storms often force climbers to make a harrowing choice: turn back while they still can, or risk becoming yet another frozen figure lost to the mountain's icy grip. This is why it's known as the death zone, a place where only the boldest or the most desperate dare to tread. Sherpa's attack, a nightmare on Everest. For many, climbing Mount Everest is a spiritual journey, a chance to stand on top of the world and witness a view unlike any other. But for British mountaineer John Griffiths and his two companions, what was meant to be an unforgettable adventure turned into a harrowing fight for survival. The trio found themselves in a heated dispute with a group of Sherpas, Nepal's legendary high-altitude climbers, renowned for their skill, endurance, and deep connection to the mountain. The argument, seemingly minor at first, stemmed from accusations that Griffiths and his team had disrespected Sherpa customs and ignored vital safety protocols. But what they thought was a simple misunderstanding soon escalated into something far more dangerous. The Sherpas returned, this time in force. A mob of nearly 100 men, their faces covered with scarves, armed with stones and sticks, confronted the climbers. Their rage was palpable. Griffiths and his friends tried to de-escalate the situation, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The attack was swift and brutal, and had it not been for the intervention of fellow climbers from Camp 2, they might not have survived. Among their rescuers was Melissa Arnott, an experienced American mountaineer who had summited Everest multiple times. She knew the Sherpas well, understood the tension, and recognized the danger before it spiraled further out of control. She urged Griffiths and his team to leave the mountain immediately. It was their only chance. Forced to abandon their summit attempt, they made a narrow escape, but the terrifying experience would haunt them forever. Everest is a place of dreams and triumph, but on that day, it became a battleground of survival. The scariest day on Everest. For mountaineer and geologist Jim Davidson, April 25, 2015, became the most terrifying day of his life. As he rested at Camp 1, high on the slopes of Everest, the earth beneath him roared to life. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake shook the mountain with unimaginable force. Within moments, ice and rock cascaded down, and the world's tallest peak became a scene of devastation. It was the deadliest day in Everest's history. 18 climbers lost their lives on the mountain, while 9,000 more perished across Nepal and nearby countries. Davidson was one of the lucky ones. He survived. But for the next 11 days, he was trapped in the disaster zone, helping fellow climbers, witnessing tragedy, and enduring the trauma of nature's fury. For most, such an experience would mark the end of their Everest dreams. But not for Davidson. At over 50 years old, he refused to let fear define him. He dedicated himself to rigorous training, pushing his body for 12 hours a day to prepare for another attempt. A year later, he returned to Everest, facing his demons head-on. And this time, he made it. He stood at the summit, the highest point on Earth, a symbol of resilience, courage, and unbreakable determination. From the top of the world, he sent a simple but powerful message to his wife. "I am standing on top of the world." The lost Soviet expedition, a vanished climb into mystery. Before the world celebrated Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay's historic ascent of Everest in 1953, another expedition may have attempted to conquer the mountain, but in total secrecy. According to whispers from the past, a covert Soviet team set out in 1952, aiming to reach the summit from the northern side. Their mission? To plant statues of Lenin and Stalin on the roof of the world, a bold symbol of Soviet dominance. But something went terribly wrong. The climbers never returned from their final camp at 26,000 feet, and the Soviet government denied their existence entirely. No official records. No rescue mission. Just silence. The only clue came from an article by Yevgeny Jipenreiter, published in the Alpine Journal in 1953, hinting at their mysterious fate. For decades, their story remained buried, until 2017, when a rescue team searching for a missing Slovak climber made a chilling discovery. At Camp 4, they stumbled upon 4 frozen bodies inside a tent. Yet, shockingly, no official reports of missing climbers matched their identities. Who were they? And how did they end up there? The Nepalese Ministry of Tourism suggested they were from an earlier expedition, but that explanation raised even more questions. Why had they never been reported missing? Why had no one searched for them? In the world of mountaineering, lost climbers are mourned, remembered, and investigated, yet these four remained nameless ghosts. Were they the missing Soviet climbers, lost in a mission that history tried to erase? Or does Everest hold yet another dark secret, waiting to be uncovered? The highest mountain on Earth has claimed countless lives, but some mysteries refuse to be buried beneath the ice. Everest's dirty secret: a mountain of human waste. Mount Everest is awe-inspiring, a towering symbol of human ambition and nature's raw power. But beneath its majestic slopes lies a dirty secret, a growing crisis that no one wants to talk about. Every year, thousands of climbers set out to conquer Everest, but they leave behind more than just their footprints. An estimated 12,000 pounds of human waste is dumped on the mountain annually, and there's nowhere for it to go. Unlike other mountains with proper waste disposal systems, Everest lacks toilets or sanitation facilities along the route. Most climbers are reluctant to carry their waste back, and as a result, the mountain is becoming a massive, open-air toilet. The consequences are devastating. The waste contaminates the soil and water sources, posing serious health risks to climbers and local communities. Many suffer from waterborne illnesses after drinking from polluted streams, even before they reach base camp. Villages in the lower elevations, which host tourists and provide essential support for expeditions, are struggling to manage the increasing waste, without the infrastructure or resources to deal with the crisis. Everest is slowly turning into a giant garbage dump, tarnishing its natural beauty and threatening its fragile ecosystem. If action isn't taken, the world's highest peak could become one of its most polluted. Climbers come to Everest seeking glory, but what they leave behind is turning the mountain into a disaster zone. Julius Sturck, the fall of a legend. They called him the Swiss Machine, a climber whose speed, precision, and daring feats made him a legend in mountaineering. Julius Sturck had a dream unlike any before him: to climb Mount Everest from both sides in a single expedition, a challenge that had never been accomplished. He had already conquered Tenkampochi, Annapurna, and countless other treacherous peaks, setting speed records and earning worldwide admiration for his skill and courage. Sturck wasn't just fast, he was bold, graceful, and fearless. He tackled impossible routes with astonishing ease, making the impossible look effortless. But in April 2017, Everest dealt him a cruel fate. While climbing the western section of the standard route, a path he had already mastered, tragedy struck. No one knows exactly what happened. Perhaps it was the melting snow, the treacherous ice, or the thin air sapping his strength. Maybe it was just a moment of bad luck. What is certain is that Sturck lost his balance and fell more than 300 yards to his death. His climbing partners, too far away to witness the accident, could do nothing but report the heartbreaking news. For a climber of his caliber, it was an unthinkable loss, proof that even the greatest mountaineers are at the mercy of Everest's brutal forces. His death left the mountaineering world in shock, a reminder that no matter how skilled, no one is truly safe on the world's most unforgiving peak. Yeti footprints, evidence of the unknown? Picture yourself scaling the icy slopes of Mount Everest, pushing through the brutal cold and thin air. Suddenly, in the untouched snow, you spot something impossible. A massive footprint, too large for any human, yet eerily human-like in shape. Who or what could have left it behind? This is exactly what happened to British mountaineer Eric Shipton in 1951. While exploring a remote part of the Himalayas, he discovered a trail of enormous footprints, seemingly made by a bipedal creature. Alongside them, he found strands of fur, unlike anything seen before. Could this be proof of the legendary Yeti, the elusive snow beast said to roam the mountains? For decades, scientists have tried to solve the mystery using advanced technology and DNA analysis. The results? Both fascinating and puzzling. The fur Shipton collected didn't match any known species. It belonged to something entirely unique, something that science couldn't quite explain. Does this mean the Yeti is real? Or could it be an extraordinary case of mistaken identity? Until we find more evidence or catch a glimpse of the creature itself, the legend of the Yeti remains one of Everest's greatest unsolved mysteries. Wildlife on Everest, life against all odds. When people think of Mount Everest, they picture a frozen, lifeless world, where only ice, rock, and the relentless wind exist. But here's a shocking truth. Life thrives even in the most extreme conditions on Earth. At an astonishing 29,029 feet, resilient creatures have adapted to survive where humans struggle to breathe. Take the Himalayan jumping spider, for example. These tiny survivors make their home among the rocky slopes, enduring brutal cold and fierce winds. In 1924, a British expedition made a surprising discovery: unique grasshopper species found nowhere else but on Everest. But it's not just small creatures that roam these heights. The elusive snow leopard, a ghost of the mountains, silently hunts in the shadows, while the Himalayan tahr, a sure-footed, horned mammal, expertly navigates Everest's steep cliffs. At lower elevations, Himalayan black bears and tahrs share the dense forests at the mountain's base. Even more astonishing, the rare red panda, often compared to a binturong, calls Everest's foothills home, staying far from the icy peaks above. Against all odds, these incredible animals have carved out an existence in one of the harshest places on Earth, a true testament to nature's resilience and adaptability. Everest may be a frozen giant, but it is far from lifeless. Haunted Mountain. Mount Everest isn't just the tallest peak on Earth, it's also one of the most mysterious. Over the years, climbers have reported eerie encounters, from ghostly whispers in the wind to shadowy figures appearing out of nowhere. Could the spirits of those who perished on Everest still linger, forever trapped in its icy grip? One of the most chilling accounts comes from Pemba Dorje, a Sherpa who summited Everest in 2004. He claimed to have seen dark figures emerging from the snow, their hands outstretched as if pleading for help or food. To him, they weren't just hallucinations, they were the restless souls of fallen climbers, caught in a ghostly limbo between life and death. And he's not alone. Many mountaineers have described hearing voices when no one was around, seeing strange lights in the darkness, or feeling an unexplainable, icy touch brush against their skin. But what's really behind these unsettling experiences? Are they simply the result of exhaustion, oxygen deprivation, and the mind playing tricks at extreme altitudes? Or is there something truly supernatural lurking on Everest, hidden in the howling winds and endless snow? What do you think? Could the world's highest mountain also be one of its most haunted? Share your thoughts in the comments.